Mumbai, the biggest cities of Maharashtra that has welcomed people from all faiths. The city is full of growing opportunities and dreams. But what also grows with it is the space crunch. With the growing space crunch, there are often parcels of land that develop into undesirable, underused space or voids that make no positive contribution to the city and its people. Under the TDR, often the municipal corporation requires private lands to be acquired. These are then supposed to be land-centric amenities such as new roads, widening old roads, public and open spaces such as gardens and parks, schools, hospitals, markets, and a whole range of community services. In short, the local bodies get space to provide facilities without huge expenditure for a larger public good. However, until the development happens, these plots remain abandoned or underutilized for many years, and in some cases they are never developed at all because of lack of planning and other constraints.
We tried to map few similar plots in and around Mumbai, and we came across varying sites with respect to the profile of the plot, the neighborhood, the intent, and the future scenarios of the plot. Through our study, we majorly come across sites that are located along the main road or the highway. We categorize these plots with respect to the time period of the intervention, temporary and permanent. For ease of study and analysis, we concluded to work on the plot located in Thane along the LBS Marg Road. We refer to the development plan where the road adjacent to the plot of land is marked as a 45-meter road, which it already is. As a result, various proposals have been made in the past to optimize the plot's use. These proposals have consisted of a recreational ground, bus depot, metro station, etc., but were not implemented because the neighborhood has revoked it. The majority of the reasons were the pollution that would give rise to an increase in the noise levels. How many years would these spaces be abandoned? Considering these factors, we plan to overcome and create an example to other such places that have been abandoned by the government. The project aims to give back to the city the redundant spaces taken up by infrastructure. Instead of being left unused or misused, they can be absorbed into the active public realm. This site is located in Thane along the LBS Marg Road. At 400 meters towards the west is the Mulanchek Naka, and 450 meters towards the east is the Teen Hat Naka. The site is roughly 250 meter in length and 16 meter wide, approximately having an area of 4,000 square meter roughly. The selected site is surrounded by residential and commercial spaces. Significant structures in the vicinity are the Thane Club and Raheja Gardens to the north of the site and Hotel Tiptop Plaza to the south of the site. With the upcoming metro station in the vicinity, the traffic and pedestrian pattern is going to change drastically. The junction is going to be very busy and congested, and so in the future getting out of the houses is going to be a tiring experience for the people living in the neighborhood. A recreational area and a spillout space could be the solution to this problem. The upcoming Metro Line 4 runs along the LBS Marg Road, and one of the metro stations is 150 meters away from the selected site. The metro junction eases public transport at a larger level and lessens the need for wider roads. We further went ahead and tried to analyze if the residents would need such spaces. We then studied the residential societies and amenities in the vicinity. We found only a handful of such residential societies had recreational amenities for the residents, and there exists such a need for space. Looking at the micro context, the site has an existing skywalk that connects to the other side of the road for easier crossing. There exists a CO cycle stand on the site which is a cycle rental for the public. Until a few months, the selected site was an abandoned plot and was recently paved to avoid the illicit usages. At present, we can see the neighborhood using it for walking, strolling with pets, and cycling as well. This makes us believe that a better design can lead to bringing in a bigger crowd. To propose an intervention, we prepared a user analysis chart to understand the end user, the neighborhood, and the passerby. As the selected site is a part of the urban transitional corridor, an urban park would be the best suitable that would cater to the passerby and the surrounding neighborhood. As the plot is linear in nature, we concluded that the space distribution would be linear as well. We then segregated the spaces based on the functional aspect: social space, transitional space, functional space. The functional space is elevated to separate from transitional space, taking into consideration the massing and visual connectivity. The elevated space is 1 meter higher approximately. As the design demands for a multifunctional stretch that could cater to the various needs of the neighborhood and a recreational and a transitional stretch for the passerby. We then listed down the possible functions that could be proposed. Food stalls, newspaper/magazine stand, these would cater to the daily passerby, space for community gathering, amphitheater, multi-purpose space, an open-air gym, these would cater to the neighborhood. Additional common functions that would cater to both the users are public restroom, sit-out spaces, existing COO cycle stand. We have also proposed an extension to the COO cycle stand that will be demanded in the future. During the initial zoning, we have considered the placement of functions to the existing trees on site. The trees have been kept at ground level, creating pockets in the design and converting them into smaller green spaces. The zoning was divided into two areas, recreational amenities and public amenities. We started to place the functions with reference to the shade created by the existing trees and could envelop into a better comfort for the users. The entry points were important to direct the users with respect to the functions. Two ramps have been provided at the two ends of the elevated space, and an entry from the amphitheater to keep it accessible from the center as well. As these are public spaces, we considered keeping them open and flexible as possibly allowing them to adapt with time. The build form of the structure demanded a sloping roof to reduce the impact during rains from the southwest direction and to harvest the water in consideration with the compound wall adjacent to it.
A part of the community space becomes an informal working space nestled below the elevated stretch. With the plain levels, we got the opportunity to explore subterranean space. This subterranean extension with the additional skylights create a cozy space for informal walking. Coming back to the reason why we have proposed an urban park is due to the allocation of the plot by the MCGM. The selected site is a government owned land which was initially dedicated for road widening. Also, the plot is adjacent to a residential zone which had other propositions which were rejected by the neighborhood. We concluded to propose something that was more flexible for the neighborhood and which will also involve them to be a part of it. The whole idea was to keep it open, allowing it to adapt with the future needs, making it more sustainable. This resulted in open-air architecture. The ability to move between inside and outside without any physical or mental barriers helps us reconnect with the nature and ourselves. Such an integrative lifestyle is an important stress release to the hyperactive culture we live in. And so, the various functions that are proposed are differentiated not by walls but by the change of materials, levels, and landscaping features. We wanted the passerby to be at the center, allowing them to have an unhindered transit corridor and be visually connected to both the edges. The footpath at the road edge would cater to the passerby and neighborhood with sit-out spaces, and it would also include the existing substation, COO cycle stand, and additionally a battery backup room. Whereas the transitional spaces would be a path leading from one end to another end, where users can walk, jog, or even cycle.
With the advancement of technology, the generation of electricity has become economically inexpensive. The site will require electricity to light the lamp posts, the linear cove light, pump room, and public restroom. By incorporating solar panels on the roof and kinetic flows on the transitional corridor, a fair amount of electricity can be generated. Also, by transferring additional electricity generated by the CEO who cycles, it can bring in more energy. Considering the water requirement for the landscaped areas, sustainable measures have been taken to collect and purify the harvested rainwater from the roofs, which will be stored in the UGT. The rest of the water falling on the landscape area will be used to recharge the groundwater table. The collected rainwater from the restrooms can be used in flushing tanks. In addition to this, the flushed water is recycled through the underground biodigester that purifies water and reduces the dependency of fresh water, which leads us to a closer step to a sustainable goal. Material differences have been proposed to differentiate the use of spaces as well. The elevated stretch is built by filling earth and decking sheet underneath the PCC slab on which the rubber floor is installed with the retaining wall at the edges. Also, the elevated landscaped areas have drain holes to draw out the water. The transitional footpath is built with the use of recycled plastic with the incorporation of kinetic flooring installed within it. The sit-out spaces will be covered with permeable pavers with the use of granite slabs for the benches. The built spaces would be constructed with metal structures with a sloping roof and a possibility of being fixed to the compound wall or a column for structural support, with roof coverings of polycarbonate sheet and corrugated sheet.
At the initial stage, during the massing, we considered the users and function it caters to. We concluded that functions like food stalls, multi-purpose space, and reading area would need to be roofed. The major reason why we segregated the food stalls from other functions was the crowd it would bring, being in a dense neighborhood. Also, the location of the skywalk was at the edge of the site, which would bring in more crowd and would be easily identifiable. Considering the elevated footpath for all kinds of users, we decided to connect these spaces: community area, amphitheater, multipurpose area, and the open gym. Being elevated, this would also segregate from the passerby. To keep this elevated stretch interesting for users, we have played with materiality and landscaping. Here, the amphitheater allows the users to sit and also acts as an anti-exit point. The multipurpose space is designed in such a way that passers can get a glimpse of what is happening as well. Various functions can be a part of it, from seminars to workshops, small group meetings of organizations, etc., allowing it to be dynamic. The open gym caters to users during the day and evening, which is a part of this space. Additional basic amenities would be required, such as a restroom. Two entries have been provided, where the users will be charged a minimum fee. The layout of the toilet allows visual connection to the footpath, allowing a sense of security to the users. The idea was to keep it hygienic and ventilated. Along with natural ventilation, ventilators have been provided for each block, allowing fresh air in. And with the help of perforated sheets, diffuse light enters the block, which also acts as a natural disinfectant.
We conclude by considering that this built environment sets an example to other such abandoned sites that can be converted for betterment of the societies and would be a part of everyday public spaces. Through this process of designing, we have been able to learn the need for open public spaces in dense urban cities. Thank you.